Hello. Okay, looks like the camera's on and recording. Reid, you ready? Excited. Okay, everybody, this is Reid Trapani, and he's a chef and entrepreneur bringing plant-based cuisine to the forefront of the Atlanta food industry. His passion for chef-driven, plant-based dining fueled for Happy Seed, a catering company that later evolved into a pop-up restaurant hosted by local Atlanta menus, and Semilla, a vegan restaurant with a modern take on Latin cuisine. He is a pioneer in the vegan space, offering patrons an alternative take on the possibilities of plant-based foods, and is chef-driven towards bringing healthier, more sustainable food systems to the Atlanta community. Everybody, give it up for Reid.
How's everyone doing? Cool. Can you hear me without the microphone? Everyone? 100%, okay, where's the microphone? All here because we like mushrooms, right? Cool. Who likes to cook mushrooms? Does not cook mushrooms? What's the take on that? Who wants to learn how to cook mushrooms? Cool. Who's trying to fail miserably? Cool. Who's ever eaten some of those mushrooms that were just really bad? Yeah, I think there is a common misunderstanding of the mushroom, how to cook it, how it wants to be cooked more specifically, and how you can enjoy cooking. Because what I've learned from being a chef and restaurateur with my other life here is that I enjoy this. People don't like to do dishes, they don't like to cook, they like to eat, but the act of cooking is like from cooking. So myself and my wife and everyone who works in our restaurant, we like to, the reason it's not Semilla is it's the seed. So we like to prepare plant-based food for people that ultimately inspires you and can give you tools to learn what plant-based food can be, how to cook it, where to find it, things like that. What qualifies me to be here? I cook between 80 to 120 pounds of mushrooms a week. We have a few mushroom plates on our menus, 100% plant-based. We source most of our ingredients from local farms, my friends are farmers. We are very sustainable. We compost everything. We compost over 40,000 pounds of food. So everything that comes off of guest plate, bites, peels, whatever, if it goes right into a cocktail or a sauce, or dehydrate, we're composting. We're utilizing people's neck and tail, think of like seed and stem, things like that. And we cook a lot of mushrooms. So I'm very thrilled to be here to walk you all through a few to be simple techniques, but to other people pretty complex. So we're going to use oyster mushrooms. Who knows about oyster mushrooms? Who knows about like different types that are just white mushrooms, like oyster mushrooms, kind of? Show your hands. What about lion's mane mushrooms? Who's heard of them but has ever seen them? They're downstairs. Okay, cool. So everyone's got some exposure. So these are lion's mane mushrooms right here. You can see them. We have a plate on our menu that uses a mushroom about this size. I would say it's about like 7 to 8 ounces. It's about an 8 to 10 ounce mushroom steak, if you will. We cook it 3 times and serve it over a yuca cauliflower mash. It's a beefsteak palomillo, which is native to Cuban food, and so we do a mushroom take on it. And then we use both of these mushrooms. These are oyster mushrooms. These are like kind of like a white-gray variety. We call these clusters, would be the name of like the whole thing intact. And we use both of these to make al pastor tacos, which who's ever had al pastor before? I'm assuming most of us aren't vegan. I'm vegan, so it's totally fine. You got al pastor? Okay. Anybody? Yes? Okay, cool. So when you go, there's people call it spit, it's a gumbo. It's stacked tall and it's shaped into a tortilla. And typically, when you're cooking animal products, you're using a marinade that penetrates it so that you can render the fat and drop the flavor. Mushrooms don't have any fat. So at our restaurant, when you cook mushrooms, you can find ways to make them flavorful by understanding what they have and what they don't have. So for ours, we use, I guess you might be able to see it there.
Yeah.
Could you aim the camera towards this?
Yeah.
We use oyster mushrooms and lion's mane mushrooms together to mimic the texture of what you would get from pork, which works very well in your mouth. And I think it's one reason that people come back to our restaurant because they're finding things that are native to them, just with ingredients that they may not typically use. So we're gonna start cooking oyster mushrooms. I like to think of oyster mushrooms as, there's some things like you would never cornmeal batter or deep fry salmon. You might, but it's probably be really bad. But you can do that, or any technique with chicken. Like chicken is like your friend, you do anything with it. You can not season it, eat it, put a barbecue sauce, it's gonna be fine. I like to think oyster mushrooms is the same thing. You can eat them straight out of the pan, you could fry them, you could grill, you can do literally whatever you want to. So I'm gonna show you guys a few techniques that really just work, and I think that you all have the tools to go home and cook. I'm gonna turn this on. Again, mushrooms don't really contain fat, so we're gonna have some grapeseed oil here. I use grapeseed oil. Grapeseed oil can withstand a really high heat, so it's called a smoke point. You ever cook with like olive oil in your house and you roast at like 400 degrees or cook in a hot pan? You can't handle that, so it becomes rancid. So I like to use, you can use avocado oil, grapeseed oil works really well, and same with like a refined coconut oil. So we're gonna use grapeseed oil. I'll use a cast iron pans. If I can encourage a few things in the kitchen for anybody to have, a cast iron pan, bottom here, and number one thing. Not only do you not really have to do dishes, it takes on seasoning, it takes on oil, you can put anything in it, and it basically becomes your best friend. So we're going to use cast iron pans. I got a big one right here, and I have a smaller one right here. And we're starting with the oyster mushrooms. So I'm going to put the microphone down and I'll just talk as loud as I can.
I got you.
So this butt right here, I save all of these. You can dehydrate it, you can make stocks with it. So if you ever buy whole cluster mushrooms at your local farmer's market, which I highly encourage you to do so, you're gonna wanna like trim around that, kind of like think about cauliflower or broccoli or something like that. So we can start, I'm just gonna split it in half. That way you can see the structure of it. So everything comes from the butt. I just call it butt because it's a butt. So we're going to start with, just looking at them and then thinking, a lot of cooking is being present, and it's like a moving meditation. So when I look at something like this, I think about where is it coming from, and then touching it to be like, okay, that's super tender, that's not. So right here, that's like, you could cook that. It's like, cow tongue or something like that, where you really have to cook it. You could cook that and just obliterate it in a stock and cook it down and shred it. It is edible. But if you're going to cook it the way we're going to cook it now, it's going to take you a really, really, really long time to do so. So I'm going to start by trimming around the butt and just kind of going like that. I'm going to see. Okay, cool. And so we have this left over. It's perfect. Save this. Don't do anything with this. Don't throw it away. Put this in water, cook it down, add like a beef bouillon cube, veggie bouillon cube at the end. You can make a really good mushroom stock, and you can freeze it for, whenever you want to make pastas or soup, and you just bomb it with some mushroom stock. It's perfect. So now that we have these, we're going to do a couple of different techniques. So we're going to start with just seeing, who's ever cooked spinach, and you throw a whole box in it and you have nothing, right? Mushrooms do the same thing. So this pan, you see the smoke coming off of it? This is what you want. A lot of people, I think, back to the point about who's had bad mushrooms, who's had someone that thinks it's bad food, maybe. People need to understand that a pan is made of metal and it has molecules. And when you heat it, those tighten. So you have to get a pan really, really, really hot. To know if your pan's really hot, you put a splash of water on it, and we'll do it right now. So right now, this should be hot enough to where this water is going to bounce off. Not quite. But if you put water in it, it starts getting a pinball effect, and it just shoots around. That means your pan's hot enough to where it's so tight that things are gliding over the top. That's when you put oil in a pan. So this right here, smoking, this is exactly what we want because it's going to be hot enough to caramelize this. Now again, when you caramelize something, it's like the sugar's being drawn out like caramelized onions. Things have sugar. Mushrooms don't really have that, so you're going to caramelize it with fat. So we're going to start with a little grapeseed oil. We're going to put it in the pan. I always like to use a towel, fold a towel next to me. You're going to swirl that around. And we're just going to throw these down and hear the sizzle. So, techniques like this, this can be the end goal. Let's just play, Q&A. Let's say you have oyster mushrooms. and your vegetarian friends comes over, what's the first thing that comes to mind of what you might do with them? Before you Google like recipes, like what would you think you could do with a mushroom? Say that again? Saute. So what's the next point? What style of cuisine? Italian? Okay, so if we're going to saute mushrooms, we would probably, would you add them before other vegetables, or would you mix them with everything and then cook it down together?
I would add them later because they absorb what's in the.
Cool, that's wonderful. So she said she would add them later. So mushrooms don't have any fat. They tend to leach a lot of water because they're mostly water. So when you have like soggy mushrooms, it's usually because the pan's not hot enough and you're putting salt too early. Salt draws water out. You have to salt mushrooms at the end. Like whatever you do, don't salt anything until the end. When you put salt in food, you ruin it. Because all it does is pull the water out and you cook it in water instead of caramelizing the ingredient. So something like this, we're gonna move it around, you're gonna see like that. So that's like the caramelization of the fat. So at this point, we're building flavor. And so what I would do if we're doing the Italian stir fry is I would probably start with this first and then let these caramelize and then throw the vegetables in it. Yeah, because if you put these in at the end, you might risk these drawing water out and then the vegetable base that you just built with like carrots and celery and onion or whatever, that just becomes like waterlogged. So I like to cook mushrooms separately, but seeing as, you know, for the home cooks, we don't want to use a bunch of pans and then cook something and then pull it out and put it back in. So let's just think about building flavor, starting with something that once you understand how it wants to be cooked, you can build other things on top of it. So if we're doing this Italian thing, we're going to start with the mushrooms, we're going to cook them around, and then boom, right now we're going to add all the other vegetables. We're going to cook that down, and then once those are probably caramelized, we can throw the tomato sauce in, cook it down, cook the pasta, and then boom, you got your Italian, stir fry thing. If anybody's ever eaten, from a woks are really hot, you can throw everything in at once and cook it all at the same pace. So that's typically why like vegetables, you want to cook them or cut them at the same size. The goal is everything needs to be cooked at the same rate. So when you have like super thick vegetables and smaller ones, none of it's going to cook the same, right? So you want to make sure that your ingredients are typically within the same size. So that way, everything's going to cook together. Yes, sir.
I noticed you didn't wash the mushrooms.
Correct. So these style mushrooms I would wash because these style mushrooms are grown indoors in a very, very, very controlled climate. To grow mushrooms, you have to have an air filtration system that like a medical pharmacy would use because mushrooms have to be inoculated. They have to have a certain amount of time to grow. And then in that time that they're growing, the air has to be so pure and so fine that if it's not, everything is just going to go bad. And so things like this, these are grown in indoor climates that are typically, very, very, very clean. If I were to buy them at a local farmer's market, I know that those guys know what they're doing because they're entrepreneurs that are growing mushrooms. They're going to bring them to a farmer's market. They're handling them safe. So when I buy them from them, I don't think some guy had them in the back of a truck rolling around with a bunch of stuff. I'm cool with that. Also, with these style mushrooms, if you wash them, they're going to be so waterlogged. Versus other mushrooms like your white button mushrooms or portobellos and stuff that have the dirt on the outside, these don't have that. So those, get a rag, don't put in the water. People who put mushrooms in bowls, takes forever to get the water out of it. So get like a towel and just sit there, have a conversation. What are we gonna do? Blah, blah, blah. What are we doing tomorrow? And just wipe them clean. Yes, sir.
Is that okay to clean them or brine them in vinegar?
100%. Like that's like next steps, right? So things like this. If we wanted to do, my Aunt Diane makes a really good fried chicken. She probably brines in rosemary and lemon and stuff like that. You can take this whole thing, usually like 4% salt. So if you were to weigh the water, which none of us have time to do, make it a little salty, put some lemon juice in it. You could brine this overnight and then pull it out and squeeze it and then take that and dredge it and fry the Semilla fried chicken. And what you've done there is you've penetrated the inside of the mushroom to taste like the end result. So a lot of things is like fried okra. Okra is gelatinous and kind of weird. But the batter, people eat fried okra because what's in the cornmeal. It's all the seasoning, right? You can do that with mushrooms. You can do some, I use the word trashy, just something that's just full of flavor, just oh my God, finger looking good. Make something like that, submerge mushrooms in it overnight, pull that out, and then fry that. And then the inside is not only gonna have the chicken consistency, it's gonna taste like the marinade that you made, right? So we have a fried lion's mane plate on the menu right now. that is served with a Mexican green mole and pipián, and we brine it with with this rich fortified stock with epazote and rosemary, and we brine it in that and then pull it out, and then we pull that out and then dredge it in cornmeal and then fry it. So when you bite into the mushroom, it's juicy and it has these like herbal notes and stuff like that. So right here, I would say we're pretty done. These have some char on them. I would be pretty pleased eating these. I'm gonna go wait and set these aside, and then we're gonna move into my favorite way of cooking mushrooms. So there's a guy. His name is Derek Sarno, and he is like the mushroom legend of the world. This guy and his brother have a plant-based food company called Wicked Healthy. You can buy a bunch of their products in stores. They have a cookbook. It's called the Wicked Healthy Cookbook. If I could tell anybody in the world to buy a cookbook, it would be that. It's 100% plant-based. There's a lot of mushroom recipes in it, and this guy has pioneered this technique that is effectively a sear. So I'm going to show you guys how to do that. I have some vegan butter with me. Again, mushrooms don't have fat, so we're going to add the fat to it. So, I'm sorry, I thought I heard someone say something. So, pan is smoking hot. We're going to add a little bit of oil. And then we're going to take this lion's mane mushroom. So this is how we cook the mushroom in my restaurant. We have a big flat top. This is about 75% water. So this whole thing, if you were to squeeze it, water's going to come out. So we're going to swirl this pan around. I'll turn it down just a little bit. We're going to put this whole thing right here. Now, at my restaurant, we have a big flat top. It's like 64 inches long, and the water spreads out and evaporates. At home, we don't have that. We have cast iron pans. So the way that I've seen him teach this, and the way that I do this in my house, smoke detector, I always tell her we can't have fun in our house because the smoke detector goes off. So if you have a fan or you open a door, if you do this, you definitely need to do that. Hide your dogs or cats because, you know, it's definitely probably going to go off. So we're going to take this other pan and we're going to do this. We're going to put it on top. We're going to push that down. And so what that's doing is it's even sear, and it's going to flatten it and caramelize the whole thing. So if you don't have a second cast iron pan, I actually forgot my press. You can use a spatula. If you use a spatula, which we can do, we'll do it on the second one. So I don't know how hot this pan is. I would say typically about like 2 minutes on each side. I'm going to prematurely lift this up because we want to get that nice golden brown crust on it. Look at that.
Beautiful.
So we have that. So now, the pan, you have to be very careful when you do this too. This pan is really hot. It needs to be a little cooler, this temperature. I'm going to actually talk so I can cool it up a little bit. Or we'll just like splash a little bit of water. So that way we can see like what really happens. These mushrooms are about 75% water. So when you do that, the water is going to come out. And when you flip it, there's still going to be water in the pan. If you want to drain that, you're more than welcome to. It has flavor. I would let it just like caramelize in the pan. So we're at home right now. I'm pressing mushrooms. Sophia's working on the sides. I've done my first press, and then there's water in the pan. I would pull that, and maybe I can open for a second so that this takes like 2 minutes to cook down. Because what we just talked about is we want to cook things in water. So you either want to wipe all that water out of it, drain it, or let it totally evaporate. And then we would go back in with a little bit more oil. Now I know I don't know how everyone's take on, consuming fats and stuff like that, but like these don't have fat at all. So when you cook ground beef or anything, the fat renders, like there's a lot of flavor in it, so you have to add more fat than you think that you need to when you cook mushrooms like this. Otherwise, they're just not going to be that good. So this has been reduced, I would say like maybe 30%, so we're going to go back in like this. And if we don't have a second cast iron pan, you can use the lid of a smaller stock pot. It's flat. Just make sure you have a towel in your hand. You can use a spatula. I like to put the spatula down and put the towel right here. You just kind of push like left and right. And so can you see, like, I want you guys to see like the water is coming out of it. This pan is so hot that it's evaporating it like almost instantly. There's gonna be a lot of water. Now again, like this is, you can do this. You can do this and make like 5 of them, and then refrigerate it. And then what you were saying, what's your name, sir? Hector. Edgar. And what Edgar was saying, like brine it. So you can make like 10 of these. You go to the farmer's market, buy a bunch of mushrooms. It'll probably last like 3 or 4 days in the refrigerator. Press all of these, grill them the next day, put barbecue sauce on it, marinate it. You can knock out, same way we do with like a bag of wings. I grew up with my mom would just have like bags of chicken. And she'd pour it out and cook it different ways. You can do the exact same thing with all of these. You can cook these, marinate it, teriyaki, barbecue, rosemary, whatever. And then each day you're like, we're having mushrooms tonight. So there's no like limit to what you can do and how you can set yourself up later with cooking mushrooms. And I know people, this seems like a very like treacherous task, but when you do it, it's fun, and then you get to look at it. You guys clapped for me. You're gonna clap for yourselves, and that's the cool thing. That's the objective. You know, I hope that you all can achieve.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Okay, would you freeze it once it's been cooked like that? Does it reheat well, or would you recommend just making it fresh? Because if you're going to make like let's say a bunch of them at once, is that something that you can freeze that in vacuum seal and kind of bust out when you're ready for, or is that something that is best prepared?
Could you freeze it? Yes, but I'm going to put the ball in y'all's court because we've been discussing water. So based on the fact this is 75% water, do you guys want to freeze it? No, because it's going to ice on the inside. So this is something that technically needs to be prepared fresh, but you could save it for a few days later. Could you freeze it? Probably. It's probably going to take all the leftover water, it's going to ice up on the inside, and when you cook it, all that's just going to like flood into the pan.
Would it make the person there very much?
I would think so. I think like when you do this, you end up with this like, you end up with a crust, you know, which is part of the searing process. And then also part of what we're going to do next, which is the most fun. So this is like, that's kind of not fully seared. So in my restaurant, we cook these and we have them almost like this. They're a little bit more cooked. And then to order, we have a pan, it's always on a burner, it's always hot. We put the mushroom down, we cook it, we put a little press on it just to get the caramelization. And then we drop some butter in it. So this is a little bit of vegan butter. We're going to put some right here, some right here. I'm sure everyone's watched a cooking show and has seen someone do this. It's called basting. So basting, effectively, this like foaminess. So who's ever heard the word like emulsification, emulsifying? Emulsifying is when you penetrate on a molecular level with fat. So like a dressing or something, you trickle it in soil. When butter is like this, the structure of it is at an emulsification level. So when you base something, the butter has to look like this. You always add cold butter, not hot butter. Cold butter maintains all of the fat. So like you're eating a sauce at a restaurant, anybody's ever cooked you anything at a restaurant, they're probably using cold butter. So then you get to have the fun, and you get to sit here and tilt the pan back and act like Gordon Ramsay, and you know, baste mushrooms, you know.
That's salted or unsalted?
This is actually salted. I didn't mean to buy it salted, but we use unsalted butter just because we like to be able to control the amount of salt that goes in it. Now, what we would do with this is, once it goes in the pan, we sprinkle a little bit it already has a little bit of seasoning on it, but we sprinkle a little bit of salt on both sides, and then because the inside is not brined or anything like that, we finish it with a little flake salt like in the window. Now, if we're watching the color of this, you know, you can see it's getting more golden brown. Now, when we turn that over, look at that, right? That's a sexy mushroom. Sorry? This is, the brand is BioLite. It's a vegan butter. I'll show it in the, I'll put it up in the window or in the video. So
I like to use this. It has some clean oils on the inside. It's just this vegan butter. We use it in our restaurant. You can find this at probably, I don't know about Kroger, you can find it at Whole Foods. There's a lot of like online marketplaces that'll send it to you with like freezer packs and stuff like that. It's probably like $4.99 for a block. But I haven't eaten animal products in almost 10 years, but when I go to the store, I see that they're more expensive than vegan products, so I think it's probably comparable. So this butter's browning a little bit, which is fine. That means that there's more flavor. And so right now we're just basting it, you know, and like you can make mashed potatoes and green beans and have mushroom steaks. You can throw rosemary and thyme in here and flavor the butter with some garlic and shallots or onions or whatever you have. There's no rules, and that's what makes cooking fun. I think that, you know, at home we try to figure out like, what does this blog say? And I have to use a quarter teaspoon of salt or whatever, but like, just trust your gut. We all made it this far, and I think we can cook food without like, you know, the mushroom god smiting us for doing it incorrectly. So this will be almost done. We're gonna finish it right here. You could probably throw, I would put no more than 3 of these in the pan. Yep. And then you could take this and like roast it afterwards. Maybe at like 300 for like 10 minutes, you get some vegetables in there. You can take the best part about cast iron pans. Let's take this in here, boom. In the oven to finish up and crisp up. And then you pull that out, you put it right on top of the potatoes and boom. And then you just gotta wipe the pan out. So you do like a 1-sheet pan roasted veggie dinner. Put this in there with it once you've gotten some color on it, and then you all of it, you know, together. While this butter's hot, so I would say like this is done. I think everyone, you know, would probably eat that. So now what we can do is you can take this whole, yes. Coconut aminos? I do use coconut aminos, not in the restaurant, but like, I like the salinity of it, it's pretty salty.
Yeah.
That and like marinades and stuff, you can take that mushroom, coconut aminos, agave, whatever seasonings, and like put it in a bag and marinate it, and then grill it, cook it again, whatever, it'd be amazing.
I can saute it with the oil on the
Yeah.
tomatoes and it just sucks it all up.
100%. Yeah. I would do it at the end though. You know, at the end, 100%. Now we can take this whole custard with the butt intact, and we can do the same thing. Put this pan on top of it. So while this is sitting here, these are just demos. So while this is sitting here just cooking, I'm going to cook something that we offer in the restaurant. So these are our handmade corn tortillas made with the blue masa. We make these fresh every day. I have some ready to go for you, and we're going to do the al pastor tacos. So the al pastor tacos, what we do is exactly what we just did with oyster mushrooms and lion's mane mushrooms. With the oyster mushrooms, we take them all like this, we cut them off the butt, and we throw them all in a pan. We put a big tray on top of it, and we cook those and lion's mane together, we flip it over, and then we roast them at a very low temperature, which is like 300 degrees, to draw a little bit more of the water out. And then we pull those out of the oven and then slice them, which is what you'll see here. They're already sliced, kind of like taco ready. We marinate it with the traditional pastor marinade. And then we cook them one more time to order. So to order, we have our fresh tortillas. We cook them, we throw these in a pan, which is what we're doing right now. And so this is, again, oyster and lion's mane together. And so the texture is, the lion's mane mushrooms are a little bit like, there's no fat, but they're chewier in your mouth. So that's to mimic like the pork fat. And the oyster mushrooms are meatier, so that's like, you have more like muscle. So when you have this in your mouth with the pineapple, with that, it's like a flavor bomb. And so this is my creative thinking of like, at our restaurant, when we recreate things that people know and love, I think about like why you love it. Because it's flavorful. Pork has a lot of flavor. Everybody loves bacon. You know about like all the seasoning that's naturally, you know, with it. So I can recreate that. So we recreate that by using 2 different mushrooms. We throw them in here. We add a little bit of oil and water together. And the oil is going to have the fat to it, and the water is going to help pull some of the water and marinade out of that, so it gets a little bit juicier. And that's what it is. And then we put a salsa on it, and sort of the fresh tortillas. So let's see what this looks like. I have a feeling this is going to look really nice. Yes?
Do you always do the line of things like that and you eat that, or do you okay?
Would I eat that? 100%. Yeah, 100%.
But you would also do things again.
Say that again?
Sounds like you sometimes then go back in and sort of like put it up again.
Yeah, so like the way that we prepare it is we do that at about 70%. So that way, if you come to the restaurant, I can do that for you to order. So it's not fully caramelized, it's not fully brown. It has some brown to it, and like a little bit of white. We press most of the water out of it. We throw it in the oven at really low temperature just to draw a little bit more on top of a rack so the water falls down. You don't have to do that in your house. We just don't have the time when we have a 90-seat restaurant and all these guests to do that to order when we have like 7 of them to make at once. So we make it to where we need about 10 minutes to make that. So it's cold, it's already been cooked, we put some seasoning on it, we put it in a hot pan, we put a little crust on top of it at low temperature so it just flattens it and adds the fat. We turn it over, and we put the cold butter in it and just base. And then we have these little trays to the side that have a rack on it so we can temp it so it's not like scalding hot when we give it to you for about a minute. And then we put it on top of the mash with chives and a little marinade and stuff like that. So that, look at that caramelization, that's also a sexy mushroom. So we're gonna throw that back on top, leave it here. Does anybody have questions while we just kind of going? Yes, sir. What I use to season my pan? Like just these? Honestly, they're going all day. And so heat seasons them in general. And then the fact that we use a high smoke point oil. So at the end of the night, we're gonna wash the these in the machine. We clean them with water, we scrub them out a little bit, we rinse that with water, and we throw a little bit of oil and we store them upside down. So that way the water can go. Yeah, just like a little splash from the towel, just wipe it out. And we have these big like sheet pans that have a rack on them, and we put them upside down so that they drip down, as opposed to sitting upright or still rust. If you've ever rusted a cast iron pan, you can just go with salt and a little bit of oil and bake it at 400 for an hour. It'll come right back out. Perfect. Little techniques. Any more questions? No. Yes, sir.
Time.
Time.
The amount of time you cook a mushroom, is there set limits? Because I know like the chicken wood,
Yeah.
that require a longer.
I think it really just depends on like what mushroom and how you're cooking it. So again, let's just call it like 15 minutes. Like you could, if you were to shred that, which you can do, we'll pull this right here, and we can, look at that, that's nice. So that is ready to go. You could marinate that, you could throw that on the grill, finish it up, like this is 100% guest ready. Slice that up, put some salt on it right now, and boom. But for your question, let's put a little bit more oil in here. We can go like this, and we can shred those. So if I ever do this with lion's mane mushrooms, I always think about like lump crab meat. And so I always cook it like this, and then whatever I'm cooking, I add these at the end. Because if you add this to something, the water's gonna pull out, and then you're gonna lose a lot of the flavor. So if you're making stews or something like that, you can just leave it just like this, cook it, make the stew, and then at the end, just spoon those in, it's perfect. But this should take no more than like maybe 10 minutes to make that. Yeah.
You have a hard time.
No, it's not good. I mean, I think we accomplished everything we need to do.
So if you're making food, like how you want to put it in.
You can throw those in at the beginning if you want to. They will just take on a lot of the flavor and have this like squishy feeling in your mouth. There's nothing wrong with that depending on like what kind of soup you're making. But let's say that you were doing like a mock chicken noodle soup. I would cook those separately, make everything else, and then just spoon it in at the end. So that way you get the texture and the bite of that specific mushroom. With the oyster mushrooms, can cook those with vegetables and then put the pasta in it and it's fine. So again, it's about like understanding what the mushroom wants and then kind of cook that. And hopefully the objective today was to kind of give you all the tools of understanding these three different types of mushrooms and how they could be prepared in some capacity.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you.
What all types of mushrooms do you cook?
I cook any types of mushrooms. We did these quesadillas with enoki mushrooms, which are these long, skinny mushrooms. We took the whole cluster and pressed them on both sides, and then folded in oyster mushrooms, and then put those in fresh pressed tortillas with the vegan cheese and the spicy salsa, and the mushrooms were just like spilling out, like chewing in your mouth. We did those as a special this past Wednesday. I tend to only cook these because it's what we use on the menu. Yeah, so we buy about 50 pounds of lion's mane and 40 pounds of oyster mushrooms a week, and clean them and cook them, and honestly have the most fun cooking them. That was cool.
What would be the best way to cook lime? I'm not lime,
King oyster mushrooms, wonderful question. I like to cut them and take a fork and shred them, and then throw them in a pan just like that with like barbecue sauce and make a full pork sandwich. Like for me, that's amazing. You can also take some seaweed and water and boil it together, and then slicing out the stems around, slice those, and then marinate them overnight with seaweed and water and salt, and then sear them and baste them like that like a scallop. So we've done plates like that. They take on so much flavor. King mushrooms are like some of the most versatile because they don't have like the very mushroomy flavor, and just the shape of them, if you do so much, you cut them in half and sear them face down, and like kiss them on both sides, and then put them next to stir-fried veggies. You can slice them up and stir-fry with like anything. But honestly, we don't use them at the restaurant. We have, but they're so fun to cook with because once you cook with them once and you figure it out, you're like, oh, I can do whether I'm back in the chicken. Like, you do whatever you know with it. Yeah,
Yeah, they're very neat, they're very.
for sure.
What is the protein value of mushrooms? Like, did you get some main course alone?
You could, but the protein value is like, yeah, you are not going to get adequate protein by just consuming a bunch of mushrooms every day. If you're aware of that, then that's where the side things come in, right? So like, you could do this, and then let's say it's back to like a southern meal. You want to do like a rosemary basted lion's mane steak. Put some butter beans on the side, and have some sort of protein to like make up for that in some capacity. Really just, it's like it's the type, it's just the strain specifically. So there's different colors. I prefer the grays, they have a little bit more structural integrity. So they're a little bit meatier and you can do more when you cook them. The pink ones smell like raw fish. I don't really like them because when you cook them you can't get that flavor out. They look beautiful, but it's something that you really have to know what you're doing to cook to take that flavor out. Which is like what I'm doing.
Could you repeat the question when people ask you?
Oh,
the answer
yeah.
that we don't know what's the answer.
So she asked about like the difference between gold and white and gray and things like that. Okay, and I was saying that it's really just like the strain. You know, that's different factors to it. And if you have the heart to buy all these different mushrooms and try them, then you'll be like, okay, you know, I like that one, but I won't buy that again. You know? Yes, ma'am.
Which farmer's market do you shop?
Which farmer's market do I shop? My favorite farmer's market in Atlanta is the Freedom Farmer's Market. It's every, yes ma'am. It's every Saturday. My wife and I used to walk every Saturday and go there. A lot of the farmers that we work with are there. Like Grow Where You Are in Hickory Hill. We buy a lot of produce from them for the restaurant. I really like that market because it's very produce driven. And so there's a lot to offer. It's at the Jimmy Carter parking lot every Saturday. I believe it opens at 8 a.m. and it closes at about 1. And then we go to the Grand Park Farmers Market as well. On Sundays, they have a lot of provisions. And then like personally for my home, I like the DeKalb Farmers Market. I like the versatility. I like just walking in there and just seeing like the hustle and bustle and getting French bread and flowers and stuff like that. So I'm a little subjective of that. Yes. The name of my restaurant is La Semilla. It's in Reynoldstown on Memorial Drive. And we are open Tuesday through Sunday. We open at 5. We close at 10 on weekdays, and we close at 11 on weekends and 9 on Sundays. So like back to your question. So like this, like if we were doing something and I was making a soup, I would have them like almost like this, and then fold that in at the end. So if we could see like that color. Like if anything's like frothy or watery, I would cook these separately. Or, you know, cook these first, then cook the stewed thing, and then fold these in the end so we can do the one pan. You know, just a minute.
So on the time, we do just oil, but we just don't do it everything an hour.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of risotto too is like building the rice. It's so starchy that you're adding stock and you're cooking it down to get that texture. So this is something that, to your point, you can build the flavor and then saute the arborio rice in that like butter that has the mushroom flavor, and then add the stock and cook that down, and then you have this like incredible mushroom risotto. And then those are off to the side, and then at the end just fold it back in. So it's like a one pan thing, you know?
Hi, so I've been wanting to kind of try different mushroom types, and so today I purchased some chestnut mushrooms.
Cool.
Do you have any tips on how I want to prepare those?
Yes.
And also what I can expect in terms of the nuances of the taste maybe compared to oyster mushrooms and rice and some of the that I need involved.
Absolutely. All right. So chestnut mushrooms. Can you hear me? Chestnut mushrooms are like, you know, people say things taste like something they don't really. Chestnut mushrooms are actually very nutty. Like they have this like wood roasted pecan flavor to them, like naturally. Now they want to be cooked at a high heat temperature. So if you have like, you know, oil, butter, whatever, I would probably like stir fry them in some capacity to where I'm eating like rice or a noodle dish. Like even if you go buy like a momofuku pack of noodles with a sauce and you cook that to the side and you have like broccoli and chestnut mushrooms, I would use the word like hammer. I would just like hammer them in a hot pan, move it around. They're gonna shrink. I would leave them whole. I would not cut them because they're gonna shrink and you're gonna have that texture. And then when you bite into it, it's like this burst of flavor. So maybe like some oil, saute those, fold in some broccoli or like carrots, whatever, and like move it around, and then put your marinade, coconut aminos, something like that, and then serve that with rice or whatever, and then you're gonna have this like super mixed texture, crunchy, you know, whatever, like flavor to it. And I think again, not to be like dismissive, but a lot of cooking is like figuring out yourself. So I'll give you the tools to say like, yeah, they're nutty and they might want to be cooked this way, but then when you make that and you all eat it, you're like, oh, next time I would serve it with this or whatever, which is the fun of mushrooms. Like you get to have this like self-discovery experience of like, maybe I would do that again, but now that I'm eating this texture, this one recipe that we used to do, it would be perfect for that. And then you go by and like keep doing it. And that's what I love about like plant-based cooking, is everyone's trying something. But when you cook it, you start to figure out like how it wants to be cooked, how you can cook it, and things like that, right? Yeah, you're very, very, very welcome. I'm gonna put these off to the side. So these are like, you know, those could just be seasoned and tossed in with anything. You know, for those of us that have kids, you can take that out, throw it in a bowl, mix it with like some barbecue sauce, and then you have like, you know, some not McDonald's chicken nugget things that you can feed someone.
What do you recommend with cooking mushrooms with onions? Or is there any specific?
I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I think if I were to cook mushrooms with onions, the thing that I'm naturally gravitating to is like burger knife. So we're gonna like finely slice or like julienne some onions, and then we're gonna cook the mushrooms down. But once they almost have that color, we're gonna fold the onions in it. Onions are gonna reach the water. We're gonna cook that down together, and then we have like the sauteed caramelized onions and mushrooms to put on top of the burger. Let's see what else. We do a bolognese, and so we take onions and carrots and garlic and chop that down super fine and mix it with mushrooms and cook the mushrooms first. And then when the mushrooms have that color, we fold in all the other vegetables and then put in the sauce and then put like these vegan beef bouillon cubes and cook that down, and then everything just like absorbs in the sauce. But again, we're cutting it to be the same shape, so that way it's all gonna cook together. So the mushrooms can be cut a little bit bigger because they're gonna shrink a little bit, but like perfectly acceptable to cook all of those things together. Alright, these are almost done. Start making some tacos. Does anybody have any allergies, like to pineapple or avocado or onions or cilantro or something like that? Okay, cool.
help, I'm more than willing to jump in.
Cool. Yeah. You want to set up over here? Because we can set up a bunch of drinks for us.
Got left there. I used to put these together when we started having
Any more questions? How can I help you all anymore? Did you learn stuff? I hope so. Cool. Honestly, I mean, as a chef, like my life is very calculated and pretty prepared. I love thinking about everything. And I purposely didn't think about this at all. Because I realized that the more that I think about this, the more it's going to be how I want it to be, instead of looking at all these eager eyes and people that really just want to learn how to cook for themselves. And that's the reason that, I love doing what I do and show up to cook for people all day, every day, and forget to feed myself, because I really just I love being able to inspire people and being able to teach them things that you're going to go home with and like, hey, Dad, do the vegan restaurant, the mushroom thing, you told me how to cook this, and then y'all are going to be smiling at some point in your homes because it's something from me, but I wouldn't have learned how to do that if I didn't put the ball in y'all's court. So thanks for being vulnerable enough to ask questions and stuff like that.
Give another volunteer.
Yeah. I'm gonna plate these and then maybe just walk around and dish them out. You can ask 10 more questions.
So that dish that you do last Semilla that you have on, what is something that's on potato? I'm forgetting what you put under.
Have you ever had yuca before?
Yeah.
So yuca, it's a root, it's so starchy. So we cook yuca and cauliflower super watery. So we blend the two of them and make a yuca cauliflower mash. It's like very similar to like mashed potatoes. So that goes on the bottom of the plate. And then we put that on top with some chives and then like a little marinade on the outside. It's kind of like, it's a super rich dish, but with the marinade, there's orange and lime and garlic. And so it's like this ladder that you climb out of it and you're like, oh, now I'm into it. Which is something that I can humbly say, people have traveled like really far to come try it.
Yeah, I've had it. It's amazing.
You had it?
We tried to replicate it.
Oh, cool. I love that.
I didn't
Awesome.
know what you did on the bottom.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just take a head of cauliflower and like go buy a frozen bag of yuca and give a high-speed blender or blender in your house.
Yeah.
So I would just like cook those two in water until they're soft and then put them in the blender with a little bit of water and blend it. And like, that's it.
All right.
Been talking a lot about grilling or something.
Yeah.
Not baking.
Baking, you could, but what I would do is I would do that and then throw them in the oven.
Okay.
Or pull them like this, toss this in a bowl with some oil, and then roast that. And then pull them out halfway through and season it. Yeah, season it so that it'll stick to the fat instead of salt in the beginning. It's going to draw the water out, and then the bottom of the pan's going to be watery, and then the water's going to evaporate under them, and then you're going to cook the mushrooms in water. So you toss them in oil, roast them, halfway through, pull them out, put some seasoning, shake the tray, put them back in. Easy. Like you can literally do that. You can do that on a tray on the left half, and then put green bean, like whatever on the right half, and have like one tray dinner. All right, cool. You guys wanna? Sure. And we said I was gonna put some of these on each. Yeah, they're ready. We get right here. And then so. Yeah, we do a little bit of this. We do a little bit later. Okay. And then pineapple and onion sauce. Thanks for helping, guys. Of course, yeah. So I'm gonna point this into the camera so you guys can see exactly why we did this. Maybe it'll work. So this right here is the lion's mane mushroom. So, damn. Okay, yeah, there you go. Perfect. Thanks, brother. All right, so this is the lion's mane mushroom. So when we slice that, like in your mouth, that's super soft. And then these are the oyster mushrooms, which have that like bounce to it. So the textural component of this taco is comparable to a traditional al pastor taco. The reason I say that is not only because I made it, but because I have mostly cooks that are all from Mexico that want to think that the food's gonna be really bad, and they love it because it is exactly like what their moms make and exactly like what they grew up on. So it's very humbling to have people that can validate and vouch for things like this. mushrooms is like, you said you've been to the restaurant. There's a common, like misunderstanding about, like vegan food and price points and things like that. When you buy, like, who's ever gotten a filet mignon at a restaurant? You're buying the weight before the fat comes out. So you might get the smaller thing, but it started off like twice the size. So with mushrooms, most people, people that understand them are gonna, put $15, $20, $30 on a plate. Like our mushroom is about a 10-ounce portion. So when we pay X amount of dollars for a pound of mushrooms and then it shrinks, that's the reason for it. And I think that some people go out and like, oh, it's just mushrooms. Well, you don't charge for like what happens at the end, you charge for what happens at the beginning. And I think that, that's something that people now are doing a lot, is making super cool mushroom plates. And a lot of people are kind of turned off by it. But when you start thinking about it from that perspective, you're like, oh, I do the same thing with steak. Now it makes sense of why people do it with mushrooms.
Do you cook with truffles at all?
I don't really hate a lot of things. I think truffles are beautiful in the sense of like they have this unique flavor, but I think that it's just this egregious excuse to just bomb a plate with flavor that can overpower. Like mushrooms and truffles are really good friends, but it can overpower the flavor of most things, and then it turns something that could be $17.40. Now there's nothing inherently wrong with that. If the chef wants to do that, that's fine. But my goal is to do what we're doing right now and to inspire people to want to cook more vegan food, right? And I don't think that if I put a truffle plate on my menu, that it would be the bridge that people need to get to the end.
Okay, someone asked if the video will be available online. Yes, everything we do here, we're videotaping. Sorry if the camera's a little shaky. I'm not a camera operator. I'm just a guy behind it. So, but yeah, we have a YouTube page, Semilla Mushroom Festival on YouTube. Feel free to go and check it out. You'll be able to watch this over and over and over and over and over again and get all the little tidbits that you may have missed. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming out. Everybody give one more round of applause for Chef Reid.
Thank you all so much, I really appreciate it. We have QR code here, you can scan it at this time. It's located on Warner Drive in downstairs. Yes, we got a question? Or? Oh, we got some more, we got a couple more right here.
If you want to go ahead and get your
You gotta penetrate it. So you cook it in water, and you can brine it overnight. Brine it like you would a chicken. Yeah. And just like fry it,
That's what we will have up here in front with water.
Yeah. There you go. But when you take it out of the water, you gotta pull it out and you gotta get that water out of it. Because you don't want to cook the water in the fat. Okay. Yeah. Okay. For sure.
Thank you, Chef.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
I learned so much out
Really?
that talk. It was phenomenal.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it.
I learned so much. So much.